Time for some more top 5 action here on East Carolina Sports Show on your ride home. Today, right now, childhood games. Now, boy, that is
Broad.
Yes, broad. So I'm kind of very excited about where this thing is going to go because I don't know. And when you say childhood games,
Right.
that could absolutely mean a whole lot of things. So, again, top 5s. Listen, is it definitive? Sure, absolutely. In our hearts, This is the absolute truth as we know it. Your top 5 may vary, and feel free if you want to make your own top 5 on your own time. But
Leave a comment below on this video.
absolutely, leave a comment.
I'm excited about this personally because, like everything we do, I think we provide a unique perspective because of the 20-year age gap. And
Absolutely.
so, whereas I grew up in the time of
Absolutely.
technology, I'm imagining that a lot of your childhood games are like pickup sticks and like the rolling
Yes.
a hoop down the road with a stick.
Yes. Staring at the sun.
Right.
Right. We just love to look at the trees. Yes, that is always interesting as well. Well, without a whole lot more of this yab, man, let's go. Come on.
Number 5.
Number 5. You going first? I'm going first. Who's going first?
I'll go first today.
Okay, good.
So my number 5 childhood game.
Okay.
I'm going to give a shout out to my father who got us turned on to this game, and we always played this game at one particular restaurant in general, but it was always a great game when everybody was just kind of sitting around having a conversation. It was a casual, idle thing to do, and I loved it. So growing up, whenever we had soccer practices, baseball practices, whatever it was, we would normally be out at Creekside Park in James City. On the way home, a place we would frequent was Franco's Pizza. When we went to Franco's Pizza, the first thing we did when we sat down, reach over to the napkin dispenser, pull out a napkin, fold up a paper football. We played paper football on the regular at Franco's Pizza, and constantly I can remember just sitting around like the dinner counter at home and eating and playing paper football with my dad. So paper football is my number 5 all time.
It's so funny because you went with this whole technology speech, and then you right off the bat,
right.
You go something old school from my generation,
Yes.
the paper football.
Paper football.
How many of those over the years have been confiscated by
countless.
teachers across
Yes.
the country? I'd like to think that somewhere there's this big place where all of those paper footballs have convened and met. That's what I would like to think. I would like to think that somewhere there's a safe home.
Right. There's just a massive pile of
Absolutely.
discarded paper footballs.
I mean, the best part, too, was when you're playing and you can, not only hit it, but, hit your friend in the face with the paper football.
Or at Franco's where there's someone sitting behind you that has a pizza on their table and, oh, sorry, our football landed on your pizza. That's the end of the game.
Oh, man. All right, well, my number 5, and this is one of the things I was giggling at when we were making these lists, because this is so specific and absolutely stupid. Now, mind you, the age that you're talking about is elementary school. I mean, probably up until 4th or 5th grade. I lived in rural America, and my uncle had a field beside where I grew up, and it was kind of overgrown, and he'd put some, farm equipment out there. One of them was this flatbed trailer that was just on a single axle. Well, as kids, we loved to get on that thing and sort of run up and down and sort of make it, one of us get on one end. There was all sorts of games we could play with this thing, but we called it the fun thing. That was its absolute name. It was called the fun thing. We would say that to, hey, where do you want to meet later? Well, let's just meet at the fun thing after lunch.
So, hold on. Explain it to me again. It was basically just an old axle that was balanced over.
It was an axle, a flatbed trailer.
Okay.
Basically, and the tongue had been taken off, so he basically had set it out there, and so all it was with the single axle and a literal flatbed that it was wood. And someone had taken tin and sort of wrapped over it, so you could. And so when they pulled the tongue off of it, it was literally just a teeter-totter back and forth. And I guess, the parents back then, they were like, listen, it keeps them busy. Right.
How many tetanus shots were from a result of the fun thing?
No tetanus shots, but an arson charge almost came out of it. Because about 5th grade,
Wow.
let me tell this great story. So about 5th grade, it's about the time people start to get mischievous. You start to outgrow things like the fun thing.
Right.
So
can we at least change the name?
So one of our friends, was stealing the cigarettes and lighter from the parent,
right,
and was out there. Ended up, because I was telling you, it was sort of in a grown-up field, sort of on the edge of it. So they set the field on fire, which burns like the whole field, the forest behind it. There were literally firefighters coming from Beaufort County going. We were up in the fire tower. It's the biggest fire we've seen here.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. So. The big 1985 fire in Vanceboro that burned half the forest.
That was you.
That was me. It wasn't me.
Take a bow.
No. It wasn't me personally. I was just with the group that was there. So.
The fun thing.
The fun thing.
So nobody really ever got hurt on it. Because the second you said something's wrapped in tin, I'm like, okay, well,
yes.
There's some laceration.
No. It, like I said, luckily, no one ever. A lot of feelings got hurt from time to time,
right,
because we're mean kids. But no real hurt. No real damage.
Number 4. My number 4. I tried to stay away from your traditional ideas of games like backyard football or whatever, because I feel like everybody sort of played backyard football. But there was one thing that I had to include, because this was a multiple times a week, the home run derby, the classic backyard home run derby. Similar to you, I lived across the street from somebody who had a fairly big field.
Yes.
It's like the people bought 2 lots and they decided to build on 1 lot. So one was just a big empty field. We were able to use that for everything we always did. But the home run derby was constant, and there's no fence in a home run derby.
Right.
It's just slow pitches. It's can you hit it into the road, or you get extra points if you hit it across the road, or anything like that. Different targets, all sorts of stuff. Had to be a tennis ball, because at the drop of a hat, not everybody's ready to go pick up their gloves, and if you hit through a window with a baseball, you're in trouble.
Yes.
So you can also hit the tennis ball a lot further.
Yes.
We found out over the years. So the home run derby was one of my favorites. I actually am a little embarrassed to share, because my mother brought this up to me about a year ago. Apparently, me and some of my friends went through a little phase where we were making YouTube videos, and we made a show on YouTube called Best in Town. And it's when we were in like middle school, and it was just us running around with like a little video camera, and we literally did like several sports competitions, so talking about a bunch of like 6th graders filming each other playing backyard like 2-hand touch football and having home run derbies and stuff. And so I got to watch that again. It made me think of it.
Some of your early sportscasting.
Some of my early sportscasting. Right. Yeah, it was great. I was like the narrator throughout the whole entire thing. It's not good. It was actually really poorly put together and done. But it is on YouTube, and you can find it if you search hard enough. But the home run derby was a staple growing up.
So my number 4, and here comes the nerd. It's and you bringing up the age gap. Stratomatic, for my age, before video games were cool like Madden and all those things, there was a game called Stratomatic, football and baseball. And you had to use cards. So imagine, if you will, like Dungeons and Dragons for football and basketball. That's what this was. And because it had player cards based on actual players and dice and all those kind of things that would play into how you could play the games out. But again, back then the only video game system at that age was like the Atari. And I was telling you, they had a game called 10-Yard Fight, and it looked like 4 ladybugs going. It didn't look anything like a football game. And so this, with the help of my imagination, which ultimately gets an honorable mention throughout childhood. I told you my imagination carried me through a lot growing up, and I think a lot of kids do. And it's absolutely one of the best activities. But to me, it was so much better than any sort of video game football, because as fun as it was to watch sports, as I've told people many times, sports wasn't on 24 hours a day, so you kind of had to wait. The way video games are now, this was a way to be like, okay, I'm ready for a real, it felt like playing real football or real basketball.
It was it looks like the original fantasy game.
Yes, everything was based off of actual stats. So, but yes, I think it was sort of the origins of what they decided to transform into fantasy football, fantasy baseball.
I see. I've never even heard of Stratomatic.
I feel so old now.
Literally, I've never heard of it until now.
If you guys remember that, it's great. But I feel like a huge sports nerd now. But yes, that my number 4.
Number 3.
Well, I'm gonna one up you on being nerdy, because I will say that my parents did a great job of not allowing me or my brothers or sisters to ever grow up being the kids who sat around playing video games all day. But it's not like we weren't privy to having video games, and I loved my Nintendo 64 that I got for, I don't know, maybe like my 9th birthday or something like that. The Nintendo 64, and more specifically one game, and they're getting ready to release a new edition of this game. Unfortunately, I'm not going to buy it. But Super Smash Brothers for the Nintendo 64 was the ultimate party game. I grew up in a neighborhood where there was about 5 of us who were within a year or 2 of the same age, the same 5 guys. We hung out all the time. And so when everybody got together and it was too hot outside or it was raining and you got to head indoors, nothing better than Super Smash Brothers. I'm talking just simply the Nintendo 64 version. I know they've upgraded it over the years, but the classics of, oh gosh, Donkey Kong, Mario, Luigi, Kirby, Peach, Star Fox, Link, Samus, the best game of all time. And we would literally, so if you don't know how Super Smash Brothers played, it's just like all these, the old video game characters all come into one game and they just like fight each other. It's just like a punching game.
My kids love the game.
It's an awesome game.
Oh yes. They re-released it on the Wii, so the Super Smash Brothers continues today. To this very day, people still love that game.
They're getting ready to release a brand new one called Super Smash Brothers Ultimate or something like that.
You and I don't follow e-gaming, but there's a huge e-gaming faction of Super Smash.
Oh, really?
So I know that probably opens the door of you going, you know what, I'm in.
I'm in now.
Right. Well, you know.
That was we would get back together when we were like 16 or 17, and someone would be like, all right, y'all want to fire up the Nintendo 64 and let's bust out a game of Super Smash Brothers real quick?
Yes.
That is the classic, the OG of Nintendo 64 games.
Yes. I would say video games for me didn't really become as cool until I was actually 19 years old, until the PlayStation came out and they actually had playing Madden on that changed everything. But I was alright, and I was an adult, but it was good enough that I was like a young adult. I was like, oh, I'm all over this.
Yeah.
So
I had Madden on the 64 and it was terrible.
Yeah. I couldn't do anything with video games. I mean, I enjoyed video games as a kid, but like I said, it didn't make my top 5. So that being said, I guess I should I'm waiting to cue my growing up.
So we're just one up in the nerd thing every step of the way.
There was nothing like, I had a group of friends.
You can have that.
I had a group of friends that also enjoyed Star Wars. And so, whether it was us making up our own stories, and there goes my good friend imagination again, where, had our own adventures, where you'd say, okay, well, this is the base over here, and this is Hoth. And this is all these things. And so, you'd run around the yards, I bet, for hours. And then as I got a little bit older, there was certainly Star Wars books. There were Star Wars comic books. So, yes, I probably spent way too much time. As you see these toys in here, I'll lay claim to all of these. And it's a small portion of my actual collection that I probably spent way too much time doing Star Wars. But you've known that about me.
I have, and I respect it. I do think that, did you get stuffed in a lot of lockers as a kid?
Nope.
No.
Nope. Sports helped me out tremendously on that, because it was like, despite being a nerd, I happened to be the guy that was also playing sports, but hey, guess what? I could relate. I was the guy who helped get the real nerdy kid out of the locker because he was my friend.
Right.
Because we talked Star Wars, and I'd be like, man, I'm sorry, dude. I can't do anything about that. Right. Clicks and all that kind of stuff. Politics.
It's like, I'll help you, but I can't be too associated.
I can't be
with
seen helping you.
Right.
I'd love to help you, but I've got my own problems at this point. You've seen my hair, and
Right. I've got a Stratomatic game to get back to.
Right.
Number 2 for me is a made-up game. I mentioned the 5 guys that I grew up with in my neighborhood, and the hot thing for kids who grew up in the 90s and the 2000s was a trampoline. Everybody had a trampoline, and I know the trampoline existed before that, but there was a new trend in the 90s and the 2000s where they built these nets around the trampoline so kids wouldn't go flying off. Well, we had it at the central house in the neighborhood. There was a trampoline, and it had a net around it, and we invented a game simply called On. O-N, On. Now, what we would do for On is the purpose of the game is so you would put, say, 2 people on the trampoline, and then everybody else was around the trampoline with a football. The goal of the game, you would have 10 lives if you were on the trampoline. Everybody on the outside of the trampoline was trying to throw the football over the net and find a way to make it hit the floor of the trampoline. So it was everything from trying to make it roll and flip over the net in some crazy way, or stand back 30 yards and just whip a bullet that comes in at a perfect flat line that someone can't catch. The reason it was called On is because we would be sitting there in the yard trying to figure out what we'd want to do, and somebody would say, On, because they wanted to be on the trampoline. So the first people to the first 2 people to say On were On. You wanted to be on because that was more fun than running around the outside.
Of course.
But it was it's basically just combining catch and playing, everyone likes to do practice like trick catches and stuff, diving into a pool. You can do all of that on a trampoline. We played countless hours and hours and hours of On. It was the original that we invented and we were proud of, but it never caught on anywhere else, man. We tried to tell people about it. We even had one new kid moved into the neighborhood, and he was like, we should call it Don't Let the Ball Hit the Black. And we're like, that sounds a whole lot better than On to you.
Yeah.
Like, no, it doesn't sound like On is one word, and it makes sense. You just muck the whole thing up.
That is funny, though.
I miss that game.
Well, my number 2 is what I like to call dining room Nerf hoops.
Nice.
In my grandmother's house, growing up, we only had one color television. God, this really makes me sound old. We had the one color TV, and it was the only
What do
room.
you mean color TV? Was there something before color TV?
Yes, we had a couple of black and white TVs.
What? That's a thing?
That was an absolute thing. So, but cable was only in there. So, and of course, she really dictated what was on. This often meant, watching something on black and white TV in the dining room, where this little black and white TV would sit in there. And but what I discovered was I hung a Nerf hoops thing, and there was this nice archway in the dining room, and I could hang that Nerf hoops up there, and just it was great on especially younger age when you weren't allowed to go play hoops in the driveway late at night.
Right.
You could continue the hoops inside. My cousins and I would all play it. It was great. Dining room Nerf hoops, one of my favorite childhood memories.
I love the dining room Nerf hoops, or any of those old school Nerf hoops that you can hang up. We've actually got one around here somewhere. We're trying to get hung up, but it's a weird one.
Yes.
The only thing I ever hated about that is it's impossible to have a jump shot.
Yes.
In Nerf hoops, you can't have a jump shot. The ball doesn't fly right. I've actually got a ball right here. This ball does not fly the way it's
you have to
supposed
figure out how to do that thing. And I remember we ended up even up because it gets chewed up by a dog or you lose it or whatever. I rolled up socks sometimes. You use whatever. But I love that thing. I'd love to go back and play a quick game of dining room Nerf hoops.
You're number one. You're number one. You're number one.
You're number one.
Hands down, the greatest game of my childhood, and it's more relevant to any children listening right now because it's summertime, and this is the perfect summertime game when you've got nights and nights on end that your parents aren't considering a school night. You don't have to worry about being in bed at a certain hour. You can stay out a little bit later. Once the sun goes down, it gets dark, and it is a perfect setup for the greatest game of all time, Flashlight Tag. Flashlight Tag, the number one game of my childhood. So many, the neighborhood kids would all flock together during the summer, play Flashlight Tag. It would never be handled appropriately. It would always be like the nerdiest kid or the youngest kid in the neighborhood. Ended up being it way more often than not because everybody would just cheat. You didn't shine the light on me. I got the base first. And you would hear, all across the neighborhood, you could hear people calling out the stupid childhood, little phrases as they get back to base. 1, 2, 3, base on me. Letting everybody know that they are officially safe and they cannot be tagged for that round of Flashlight Tag. But I loved it. It was the reason I stayed in shape as a child because we would be out there just sprinting all around the yards, darting all over the place. Had to play barefoot. It was pretty much a rule, but nothing better than the good old days of thinking back of not going back home till 10 o'clock at night, completely sweaty, covered in dirt, all that good stuff, and then just crawling straight into bed, sleeping the night away, waking up to your mother yelling at you that you didn't take a shower before you went to bed, and now she has to wash your sheets. Flashlight tag.
I know this is one that you were talking about, but I have to combine it all, and it's sort of, my best childhood memories were every day. For a while, it sort of evolved into it, and so I just the kids I grew up on with the Oaks apartments. So give me a big shout out to Nikis and Chris and Stavaris and George and James and Steven and Antonio. And I listen, if I forgot anybody, I really apologize. But it was every day, man. It was football during the football season. It was baseball during baseball season. It was basketball during basketball season. It was tournaments. It was games of 21. Sometimes we would figure out what we were going to do the night before. Sometimes we wouldn't figure it, but it was all the time. We were always playing something. And those were some of the best memories. I mean, just every day, especially summertime.
Pickup games of any kind.
We'd already be out there today playing like the 8th game of the day.
You'd have a bracket. Like you would found some of your sister's chalk and made a bracket in the driveway. And
yes. Oh, man.
I miss it, man.
I do, too. You kids.
It's so hard to get a pickup game together, with a bunch of – I mean, for me, my friends are all 24, 25. I can never get that. I can't even imagine being, 44, 45 trying to get a pickup game together.
All right, I know we need to take a break. We'll do that now, and we'll come back.